Hey Wargamers, today I'm going to start a new series of videos looking at the state of the Tau Codex in 2019. There's been a lot that's changed in the Codex over the past year or so since I did my initial Tau Codex review, and so it's time to revisit some of our favorite units and talk about how they've changed and how they fit into the Tau Codex and the Tau Army today. So today we're going to start with probably one of the most, if not the most, inquired about unit in the Codex, and that is the classic Tau Crisis Suit. So today we're going to talk about the Crisis Suit's profile, its weapon options, and how you might want to use yours in your Tau army moving forward. Before we do that though, I want to say thanks for watching. If you like this video, go ahead, hit subscribe. That way you won't miss any of my upcoming Tau content, including all of the other videos in this series. So, alright, let's jump into it. Starting with the good old Tau Codex, the stat line hasn't changed. Really, the only things that have changed are the points cost, which really makes a big difference. So Crisis Suits come in a unit of 3. One of those should be your Sergeant character, which is the Chazvray, and then 2 Chazui. Chazui have a movement of 8, weapon skill 5 up, ballistic skill 4 up, strength 5, toughness 5, 3 wounds, 2 attacks, 3 on the Chazvray, leadership 7, 8 on the Chazvray, and then a 3-up save. They come equipped with a burst cannon, although you can switch that out, and then each one can take 2 drones, which again we'll get to in a moment. They have For the Greater Good special ability, which allows them to fire Overwatch alongside nearby units that are being charged. The Bonding Knife Ritual, which allows you to successfully pass a morale test on a roll of a 6. Because you don't have that many models in a unit, a lot of the times when you're failing on a Crisis Suit unit, it's going to be on a 5 or 6 or something like that. And so being able to ignore 6s altogether is actually very useful on these guys. Then they have the Manta Strike ability, and this is really the key thing about Crisis Suits, is that they can deep strike and they can deliver their weaponry in a targeted fashion somewhere on the tabletop. So Manta Strike is a huge boon to their offensive ability and also their defensive ability, allowing them to deep strike somewhere on the table 9 inches away from the enemy. They have the Tau Empire and SEP keywords, the Battlesuit, Jetpack, Fly, and Crisis Suit keywords as well. So Battlesuit keyword means that they can benefit from Savior protocols, which allows drones to intercept wounds for them. So instead of taking wounds themselves, they can pass those wounds onto drones. This is what really gives Battlesuits, including Crisis Suits, a huge amount of survivability. They also have the Jetpack keyword, as I mentioned, but no, that doesn't do anything. So stop asking. Still doesn't do anything. So for all that, you're paying about 80 points per model, depending on the loadout. If you kept them stock with just the burst can, they'd be quite a bit cheaper. But overall, depending on what you're going to take, you're probably looking at about 80 points a model, which is really not too bad considering all the things you get. You get a nice sturdy base. It's not the most durable, it's not the least durable, but it does have that Battlesuit keyword, meaning that you can utilize Savior protocols. It has Fly, it has an 8-inch movement, and it can take a bunch of different weapons. So you actually get a fairly good package for 80 points. And I think that's why Crisis Suits are kind of back in the game now with Chapter Approved 2018. Now, as far as how you're actually going to want to equip these battle suits, you have a ton of options. That's why you bring Crisis Suits. Both in the list design phase and on the tabletop, they give you flexibility and allow you to address certain situations in a very targeted way. They address crises on the battlefield, hence the name. So that is the whole point of Crisis Suits, is their flexibility and adaptability. So there are lots of different options. From a weapon standpoint, though, I think there are 3 main weapons that you want to consider. 1 is the Missile Pod, 2 is the Fusion Blaster, and 3 is the Cyclic Ion Blaster. I think these weapons give you enough niche differentiation between the Crisis Suits and other battle suits, and also have some pretty beefy stats behind them and an appropriate points cost that make them a competitive choice for at least some enemy types. So for missile pods, you get a really nice range. They have a 36-inch range, strength 7. They have a -1 AP modifier, and then they do multiple damage. So you get a nice package there. But of course, their strength is in their range compared to the other 2 options. That's where they're really going to shine, is when you want to stay away from the enemy. And Crisis Suits can do that, although if you're going to be far away from the enemy, you're really not necessarily using that Manta Strike ability or any of their other types of benefits. Instead, if you're going to be taking missile pods for range, you're much better off just going with broadsides. They can do the same job better on a more durable platform. They don't have the maneuverability that crisis suits have, but they can be a more point-efficient offensive unit. So missile pods kind of lose out in that race with broadsides because of that. However, missile pods, if you were to be taking them, are a little bit more effective, a little bit more points efficient than a fusion blaster against some things with invulnerable save. So they do have a little bit of staying power, but again, I would say if you're going to bring missile pods, you might as well be taking broadsides. That leaves the fusion blaster and the Cyclic Ion Blaster as really the two contenders for crisis suit loadouts. Now, of course, the Cyclic Ion Blaster has a lot of strengths. It has a reasonable range, 18 inches. It has the ability to be overcharged, which gives you a little bit more punching power, and it has a nice volume of fire. Being able to dish out 3 shots as opposed to just 1 on the Fusion Blaster makes a big difference, especially when you're dealing with a mediocre ballistic skill of 4-up. Now, of course, you can amend that with things like marker lights or certain stratagems, but overall, if we're looking at the face value of these weapons, the Cyclic Ion Blaster gives you a lot of flexibility and is more points efficient than Fusion Blasters against things with invulnerable saves. So if you're going against Knights, for example, Cyclic Ion Blasters are going to be a more effective loadout for you than a Fusion Blaster because of that. They don't suffer as much because of invulnerable saves because of their lower AP modifier and higher volume of fire. So we actually see Cyclic Ion Blasters being a really good choice for things with invulnerable saves. On the flip side, Fusion Blasters have the same 18-inch range, but if you're really looking to use them, you gotta be within 9 inches to get that benefit of half range. That allows you to roll double and take the higher damage amount, which is critical when really you're banking on a single shot for each weapon to do damage. So if there isn't an invulnerable save, the Fusion Blaster is actually much more points efficient than the Cyclic Ion Blaster for a lot of targets, up to twice as point efficient as a Cyclic Ion Blaster in the absence of an invulnerable save. So for that reason, the Fusion Blaster is going to be a better choice against a more diverse array of targets, although Cyclic Ion Blaster, again, is going to be better if you're taking invulnerable saves. So a mixture of the two can be a complementary loadout for a single crisis suit, and you'd want to spread that across the entire unit. I should note that, in general, it's my perception and my practice that it is always better to have a consistent set of weapon ranges and target types on a crisis suit team than to have individual guys specialized. You know, there's a little bit of a temptation to kind of take a kill team approach to this where, this is my anti-infantry guy and this is my anti-tank guy and this is my anti-horde guy or whatever. And you have different specialized guys within a unit. That is a good way to be inefficient and not use all your firepower. If you want to have specialized units or specialized crisis suits, put them in separate units. Do not mix them within a single unit because you're just going to be wasting half the unit or something based on where you're deployed and what enemies are nearby you. So being consistent with your loadouts within a unit, I think, is highly advantageous. Now, the biggest question that we get, aside from which weapons do I put on a crisis suit, are, should I be taking support systems? And the answer is universally, well, most of the time, no, you shouldn't be taking support systems. And the reason is simple. The most alluring support system is the advanced targeting system, which increases your AP by 1. And if you were to be taking that, you'd be giving up a 50% increase in your weapon loadout. That's because crisis suits can take 3 weapons or support systems. So if you are comparing 2 weapons and a support system to 3 weapons, that is a 50% increase in your offensive capability just by taking a 3rd weapon. However, if you're taking advanced targeting system, there are very few cases where that's actually going to increase the effectiveness of those two weapons by 50%. We're talking about any situation where you're moving from a 3-up to a 4-up save. That's a 50% increase in the number of shots that get through. So maybe if you're using burst cannons against a Marine, then an advanced targeting system would be a 50% increase in efficacy of those weapons. However, in that case, I would strongly urge you to reconsider your weapon loadout, since, again, there are other units that can do that in a more point-efficient way than crisis suits. So if we're looking at Cyclic Ion Blasters and Fusion Blasters as our main weapons, there's not very many options where having that advanced targeting system is really going to give us a 50% increase in the efficacy of those weapons. So for that reason, we're going to stay away from support systems, with the exception of the Iridium Armor. The Iridium Armor is a 10-point upgrade that you can take that will move your crisis suit from being a 3-up save to a 2-up save. For every 3 models, you can take one of them. And this is a great deal. You don't want to put it on your Chazray because you want to be using this unit to be tanking shots. So the crisis suit with Iridium Armor should be a Chazwi. And so basically your 3-man loadout will be your Chazray, your Chazwi, and then your Chazwi with Iridium Armor. And you will have those 3 guys in your 3-man unit, and you can start by allocating wounds to the Iridium Armor and utilizing that 2-up save. That'll make your unit as a whole last much longer if compared to any type of other allocation of wounds, with the exception of saver protocols. So yeah, that's the basic loadout for your units. Another big question I get is, how should I load my Crisis Suit team with drones? Drones can be taken as an upgrade to a Crisis Suit unit. They are deployed as a single unit, but once they hit the tabletop, they become 2 separate units. We'll talk more about drones in a separate video very soon, but in general, you should know that drones are able to intercept wounds via the Saver Protocols rule, and they actually consolidate damage as well. They turn multiple damage shots into a single mortal wound, and therefore mitigate vast portions of your opponent's firepower very easily. So drones are a great component to any Tau army, especially if you're talking about a relatively moderate durability unit like a Crisis Suit. So Crisis Suits need to be accompanied by drones if they're going to survive on the tabletop. What drones is a really good question. So you should be taking between 4 to 6 drones in a Crisis Suit unit. You don't want to be taking more than 6 drones because drones have a very low leadership, and beyond 6 drones, you probably will just lose them to morale after a single round of shooting. So 4 to 6 drones is really what we're looking at here. And the default selection is for all of those drones to be shield drones. Shield drones have a 5-up feel no pain that allows them to persist beyond multiple rounds of saver protocoling. So shield drones are a really good investment. However, Crisis Suits are really one of the few battlesuit units that I think can benefit from taking alternative types of drones. For instance, if Crisis Suits are deep striking in somewhere where the target is not visible to your other marker lights or is out of range, having a couple marker lights on or a couple marker light drones in a unit of Crisis Suits can actually be very beneficial because it can increase the likelihood of you being able to reroll your ones. If you're bringing Cyclic Ion Blasters, having that ability to reroll ones is essential because it allows you to potentially avoid mortal wounds caused by those Cyclic Ion Blasters when you overcharge them. So marker light drones on a unit with Cyclic Ion Blasters I think is a pretty good idea. Now, would I take only marker light drones? No. But taking a couple marker light drones in addition to your standard assortment of shield drones is not a bad idea at all. Now, gun drones can also have a place in a Crisis Suit unit, especially if you are gearing them to be more anti-infantry. Having those, salvos of pulse carbine shots can be really beneficial, especially if you are deep striking them next to something with a drone controller. So for example, if you're bringing a hazard suits can take a drone controller at no reduction to their weapon loadout. And so they might be a really good caddy for a drone controller. You can have that hazard suit drop down. He has a drone controller that benefits his drones as well as the Crisis Suit drones. And suddenly you have a lot of drones that are being influenced by that one drone controller. So again, you could sprinkle in a few gun drones based on that. Overall, though, the general assumption of shield drones is still pretty good, but, modified to taste, essentially. Like most units in the Codex, Crisis Suits can benefit from a Sept tenet, and really, Crisis Suits are going to benefit pretty reasonably from any sept that you choose. They're good in every sept. There's not really any one that is a huge disadvantage for them. If there were to be any sept that was, not really congruent with Crisis Suits, I would actually say it would be Borcan. Borcan benefits heavy and rapid fire weapons, and the only rapid fire weapon that Crisis Suits can bring is the plasma rifle. And as you may have noticed, I have not mentioned the plasma rifle yet, just because it's just not pointed efficiently still. So not really a big benefit for taking Borcan, but every other sept does benefit Crisis Suits in some way. Tau Sept, of course, being able to fire Overwatch on a 5 instead of a 6 if you're nearby another Tau unit, certainly good. Vior Law is very nice as well. It allows them to advance and not suffer penalties for firing their assault weapons, which, again, every weapon that we talked about today is a assault weapon. So that's nice. It gives them a nice bit of maneuverability, which is really favorable, especially if they are deep striking on a far end of the table, grabbing objectives, putting pressure on the enemy. I really like Vior Law Crisis Suits for that reason. You can also go with Sakia. If you're taking Fusion Blasters, being able to re-roll one of your shots is actually pretty darn good. If you only have 3 shots, that's 30% of your shots that you're going to be able to re-roll. Well, 33.3 repeating, of course. So not a bad perk there either. And of course, it gives you access to the benefits of the Sakia stratagem and other types of perks like that. So definitely a good choice there as well. Dalith is good because it allows them to jump, shoot, jump using the stratagem for them. And it also allows them to have a better cover save. And especially since cover is so hard to come by in 8th edition for non-infantry units, that's not too bad either, right? If you have that plus an Iridium Armor, you're looking at a 2-up/1-up armor save, which of course a 1-up will always fail, but allows you to absorb -1 AP just off the bat if you stand still. So that's not bad at all either. And then of course we get to Farsight Enclaves, which has the drop zone clear stratagem. For 2 CP, you can improve the ballistic skill of a Crisis Suit unit by 1. So instead of being a 4-up ballistic skill, they're now a 3-up plus any other benefits you get from marker lights and stuff like that. That's not bad at all, right? That's a 33% increase in their efficacy right off the bat, just with that stratagem. Now it's 2 CP, and you're having to use 2 CP on 1 unit. So really, you're looking at this being more effective and more really economical for a larger unit of Crisis Suits, which can be a liability depending on your loadout, and it's not a negligible point investment. So it's a little challenging, but if you're bringing Farsight and you want to have a Crisis Suit bomb, you certainly can do that and use the drop zone clear stratagem to pretty good effect. Then you also get the ability to boost your wounding within 6 inches too, which if you're deep striking, you're not quite there, but you're gonna be there pretty soon. So hold on. So yeah, that's not bad either. So overall, Crisis Suits benefit pretty well in every sept. Overall, how would I run Crisis Suits, or how do I run them now? Basically, I take a 3-man unit, load them up with shield drones. I give each of them 2 fusion blasters and a cyclic ion blaster. Again, I'm kind of straddling the fence here in terms of their function, but both cyclic ion blasters and fusion blasters have that 18-inch range, which means if I deep strike them in, they're going to be able to hit whatever I'm looking at right away. They're not super far away. They're not super close. They're just right. And it gives me flexibility on their placement. Those 2 weapons also complement each other because one is better against things with invulns and one is better against things without invulnerable saves. So I think it's a pretty nice loadout. I use them to take out targeted enemy units, things that are in the backfield, and to push the backfield and be a general disruptive unit. Do I think that they are a top tier unit overall? Probably not. But there's still a place for Crisis Suits, and they can be effective if you bring them. So it You're not going to see them at the top table of the LVO or Adepticon or anything like that, but you will see them doing well in a diversity of games. So overall, I like Crisis Suits. They certainly have benefited from the point reductions that they had in Chapter Approved 2018. About a 20% decrease, maybe a little bit more, depending on the loadout, and that's pretty good. So Crisis Suits are at least moderately competitive compared to things like Broadsides and Riptides now. You can bring them, they have a function, and I'm really happy with the state of Crisis Suits in 2019. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Have you been using Crisis Suits? What have you liked? What have you disliked about the changes? And as always, thanks for watching and happy wargaming. Hey everyone, this video is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoyed this video, consider joining our community over there as well. Special thanks to Shifty, Nick Steele, Tal Oswell, Scott Heater, Jared Egler, Jake Johnson, Stephen Cohen, Scott J. Smith, Eric Jackson, Benjamin, Chris Kessler, RP, Julian Peck, Peter Benjamin Parker, Andy M. Young, and Giovanni DiMaggio.